Welcome back. My name is Mildred. Now let's look at the position utility classes. We use the position property to position an element in CSS, and we have helpers like the top, the bottom, the start, and the end. Now when we use a static position, our positioning it static and is the default of the browser. The relative position is position relative to itself, and it acts as an anchor for the absolute position. And so when we position absolute, we remove from the flow and position relative to the nearest position ancestor. And when we have sticky position, we have that element scrolls normally and then it will stick at the threshold. We can have a fixed position where it is fixed to the viewport and stays put on scroll, just like we have the top nav, right? So let's look at how we use it in Bootstrap 5. We want to position this, let's say this div tag, this container we have here. Let's do it from here. We have this web page. I have like a template file. We're going to use this template. So let's say I want to position this div tag. Let's position this relative because it is going to be the anchor for the absolute. So in Bootstrap 5 we use position relative like this. So say class is equal to position relative, and we had the D inline block before. Now we want to position absolute, let's say the span tag here. So let's look at where this messages and 5 is. So we have messages and 5. We want to position this 5 to be like above this. So here for the span tag, I'm going to say position absolute, and then let's say top 0, which means I want it to start at the top and then start 100. We'll leave start 100 there. So what we use this top 0% to do is from the top of the edge. So we have 0%, 50% and 100%. So, and this percentage is from the left edge. Alright, so we say 100% from the left edge. So we use start 100 here like this. So we use this translate middle to shift the element by minus 50% x axis and minus 50% vertical. Okay, so what it does, it just centers it on its anchor point. And so when I come here and I refresh, we'll see this is going to be up there and center it at its anchor like this. So we've positioned this using that. We can have a nav, let's say this navigation, let's make it to be sticky navigation here. So let's come here and we put the top to be 0 already, but I'll just put position sticky like this. And when I refresh, we'll just go up and then it sticks there. So you can see that sticks at that threshold. So here it keeps scrolling, but at the top it sticks. So we can see how it happens. So now let's look at the width and height utility classes that we have in Bootstrap 5. Now to set an element's width or height as a percentage of the containing block, we use the width and the height utility classes. Now for those of you who took the CSS class, you would have known how we do this, but we use W to mean width in Bootstrap 5 and H for height. So when you see a W hyphen and a number, that's why we're putting the width. And then when we use H, a hyphen and a number, we are talking about the height. We can also have H hyphen auto, or we can have something we call MW, like say MW and then a number, and that means max width, right? So let's do that here. Let's try to make this button full width. So let's say the button here we have a width of, let's say 100. And this is going to be the full width. So when we come here and we refresh, we have a full width button here. Let's center this card at half width. And so we'll come here and we'll say for this card here, half width will be 50. We'll put W 50. All right. And then when I come here, I refresh, we have it centered at half width. We can also have a responsive image that will never overflow here, and we can put max width of 100 like this. So for instance, when I reduce this screen size, you see it overflows because of we have horizontal scroll bar. So if I want to have this not to overflow, I'll use the max width property here. And so for this image here, I'm going to put the class here will be max width 100. And when I refresh this time and I minimize, it resizes that image. So but let's look at the height. We just looked at the width, right? So let's say we want to have a full height section here, and we have this section here. A full height will be H 100. It's the same numbering like we use for the width, but this time we just change the W to H. All right. So when I refresh here, I have this hero section to have a height of 100, which means it's going to have the full height of this item. Now let's look at the opacity utility classes. Now if we want to change or control how light or dark, or how light or how opaque a color is, we use the opacity property. We have opacity 0, 25, 50, 75, 100. Where we say 0, we have fully transparent, which means it will be invisible, but it will still occupy space. When we have 75, or when we have 25, sorry, we have it at 75% transparent. When we have 50, it is 50% transparent. When we have 75, it is 25% transparent. And when we have 100, it is fully opaque, and which is the default. So let's set this. Let's say we want to watermark this, or before that, let's say we want to dim this so that it will look disabled, right? So let's look at how it looks here. So this one, we have this disabled. Let's say we want to dim this, and then the next thing we want to do, like this draft, we want to make it like a watermark. So we'll come here, and I have button class, button primary. Let me make the opacity here will be 50. So I want it to be dimmed, and I want it to be disabled also. Then for the watermark style, I want to, let's say for this, I want to make this opacity, let's make it 25. And when I refresh, we have this, because we use disabled, but we see that the color is a little faded, and this looks like a watermark when we put the opacity to 25, which makes it 75% transparent like this. Now let's look at the overflow property. We want to control what happens when content exceeds its containers or the borders of the boundaries where you want the content to display. We have overflow auto, where that will allow scroll bars to appear only when the content overflows. We have overflow hidden, that clips overflowing content, and so we won't have any scroll bars. We have overflow visible, where the content renders outside of the box. That is always the default. And then we have overflow scroll, which will always show scroll bars even if it's not needed. And then we have overflow X auto and overflow Y auto, which will scroll on a single axis only, under the horizontal or the vertical axis. Let's create a scrollable list container here, and let's look at the container on the web page here. So we have this list, and we want to have a container for it here. So let's say we have this list item here. Let's say we want to put this to be overflow auto, like this. Now this is going to have scroll bar only when it is needed. We want to have horizontal scroll for a white table like this. So here we'll put a class on the div here to be overflow. So we're going to overflow auto for x-axis, overflow x auto. All right, and then let's say we want to clip this image in a rounded frame. Now the class here is rounded circle. Let's add an overflow here. So let's say overflow hidden. Now overflow hidden is going to clip overflowing content, and it will not have scroll bars. Here for the table, to see the overflow X, we can actually put content in this table for us to see how we can control the horizontal axis for the table if the table is really wide. And for this we use overflow hidden here to clip the image. I spelled hidden, and so when we refresh again, we now see that this rounded image like this, and it clips that image. When we say overflow hidden, it clips overflowing content, and so we don't have any scroll bar. All right, let's look at the float utility classes. Let's use this to see how we can wrap text around floated images. Now float is used to, when we have images on the page and we want to float text around the images, like we have in newspaper articles or all those illustrated books. We float those elements, either we want them to be the left of the image or the right of the image, but we want them floated within a containing block, right? If you have a complex layout, you want to use flexbox instead, and if you don't have a complex layout, you want to float, right? So we have float start. Now when we have float start, we float to the left, so it's right to left away. And when we have float end, floats to the right. When we have float none, it removes the float. When we have float MD start, like that, when we have a breakpoint, and we have a responsive float control. So we use the different breakpoint, SM, MD, LG, and the rest. So let's wrap the text around this image here. Let's say that we want to float to the left, so we use float start. Okay, let's say we want to, whenever we float, we always want to clear after float, and so for that we use clear fix like this in Bootstrap 5. So we want to now float the span to the right, and so let's say float end. All right, and when we want breakpoints, we use the breakpoints if we say MD like that, or LG or SM. All right, so let's refresh this, and on this inbox let's see the number of messages floated to the right, 12, and let's see this text wrap around the image. So when I refresh this, I will see the text wraps around the floated image to its right side, and here we have inbox, and on the right you have the number of messages to the right here. So you can't really see a design as much as we want to see, because I'm using just this template for everything for us to see all that we are doing. So I can delete all that is above here so we can see things better. Okay, so we have that. Now we want to look at the visibility utility. We can toggle visibility without affecting the layout. Visible and invisible in Bootstrap 5. Visible is a default where the element is visible. Invisible, the element is hidden, but it still takes up space. When we use dnone, when we look at the display, and we use none, we usually do not have the element occupy space. But when we use invisible, it is hidden from display, but it still takes up space. So let's work with that here. Let's say we want to, I'll remove the float, and I will say I want to reserve space but make it hidden, let nothing show. So I'm going to put this in visible, and then here I want dnone will remove it entirely if I use dnone like this. But if I want to make it visible, then I can use JavaScript like this, and when I toggle here, I will toggle invisible to become visible. All right, so this is how we can use it. So let me go back to my web page. We want to see it, but we're not getting it displayed. Okay, all right, so I'm going to delete this, and now let's look at the radio utility classes. I'm going to refresh my page again, and we're going to look at the radio utility classes. Now if we want to maintain a fixed aspect ratio for embedded content, like we have YouTube video here, but for some reason it's not displaying, but let's say we have this YouTube video here. We want to have this embedded YouTube video to maintain a certain aspect ratio. We have the ratio 1XL, that's the square will be 1 by 1. Then we have the ratio 4 by 3. That's just like the classic TV 4 by 3. We have 16 by 9, which is the widescreen HD, and we have the 21 by 9, which is ultra wide cinematic. So we use ratio like this. Let's do an example. So for this YouTube video, we wrap within a container, and then we want to put the ratio. So we have the base class ratio, and we want this to be ratio 16 by 9, like that. Now we want to have the square thumbnail. We want to have a ratio of 1 by 1, so we'll say ratio 1 by 1 here, like that. And so when we refresh our page, we have the ratio like this. We have the 16 by 9, which is HD, and then when we have a thumbnail, we'll have it there, but the video doesn't display. Now we're going to look at object fit utility classes. I'm going to delete all of this so we can see where we're at. We want to control how an image or video or media fills its container. It's just the same thing with the CSS object fit. We use object fit cover that will crop to fill the container while it preserves the aspect ratio. We have the object fit contain that will scale down to fit entirely inside the container. It doesn't crop the image or the video. And we have the object fit fill, which stretches to fill exactly, and we can have distortion of the image if it stretches too much. And then we have object fit scale, which is like contain, but it doesn't scale up. We have the object fit none, which renders at the natural size and it ignores the container. So let's look at how we can use the object fit here. Let's say on this picture we want to have a consistent thumbnail grid, and we want all of them to be the same size. We don't want any distortion. We're going to change this. We're going to add our object fit property here. So we want it to be, let's say, cover. So it's a rounded image. Let's add object fit cover in the class. And when I come here and I refresh, we have that object fit cover. Refresh our page, and so we have it like that. So we have it, and we have the rounded corner there. All right, so you can have object fit contain, you can have fill, you can have scale, you can have none. Right. So let's look at the vertical alignment utility properties that we have in Bootstrap 5. So we use vertical align to apply inline or inline block or inline table and table cell elements. We use them to apply a vertical alignment to those elements. We have align baseline, align top. So align baseline is the default, which aligns to the text baseline. We have align top, which is the top of the tallest element in the line. We have align middle, which is the middle of the parent element. We have align bottom, which is the bottom of the line, and align text top, and align text bottom will align to the top and align to the font. Let me delete this and let's look at the alignment. So we have this image now. Let's look at how it looks. So we have this image and we have settings, so we can make this align middle here, so it will align to the center. So here we'll say we want to align the icon to the middle, so in the class we'll write align middle, and here we want to align middle also because we want to have the table cell centering. So it's already aligned middle. Now we can also have like interaction utility. We want to fine-tune user interactions, so the behavior with cursor, and we want them when they select a text, when the points at event classes and all of that. We have the cursor pointer utility class that will show a hand cursor and we say now something is clickable. We have the cursor default, which is a default arrow cursor that we have like what you see now. We have the user select all, which we click select all of the text in the element. When we have user select none, prevents the user from selecting text. And then we have user select auto, which is the browser default selection behavior. And then we have the none, which is the pointer event none, and the element ignores all the mouse or touch events. And we have PE auto, which restores pointer event and is useful to override PE none on a child. Now let's go there and let's try to do that. I'll remove the alignment and let's work on this. So we have this API key. We want to click to select. We can add user select all here. This non-interactive overlay here, I'll put ignores all mouse touches. Let me put PE none. Let's refresh this. So you see clicking just select to copy immediately, right? So this decorative overlay here, and so when I refresh, it ignores all mouse touch events. Like see, I thought so this is the overlay, but when I come here and I click on this, it automatically selects that. And everything here, we have this PE none ignores mouse touch events if there are events here. Now let's look at the Z-index utility classes, and we use Z-index to control stacking order of positioned elements. So higher Z-index value appears on the top. So we have ZN1, which is the Z-index of -1. That is behind normal content. We have Z0, which is a Z-index of 0. That is a default stacking level. And we have Z1, 2, and 3, which are layers above the default content. Alright, so when we put 0 is the default stacking level. We have 1, 2, 3, the stack above 0. We have N1, it's just like -1. Alright, so let's have this background decoration behind the card. So we have this as position relative and this absolute position here. Let's put this to be behind Z and we'll write it like this N1. Alright, so this will have the card will be behind the normal content of the page, and here we'll put, let's put this as Z1, so it will have a higher Z index here. And when I come here, we see how it is. When we refresh, we'll see. Now let's look at other utility classes. Let's look at the stacks utility. This is from Bootstrap 5.1 and above. We have vertical form stack and we have the horizontal toolbar. When we use VStack, that's the vertical stack, is equivalent to dflex, the flex column. And so when we use HStack, is the horizontal stack that is equivalent to the dflex, the flex row align, and the align item center. So let's say we want to have a vertical form stack here, and we will put the class here is equal to VStack like this. That's how we write that. And then for here, we'll say we'll put this to be HStack. So that's just how simple this is. When we come here and we refresh, we'll see how we have that vertical stack, and then we have the horizontal stack for the buttons. All right, so this vertical, this horizontal. So I'm going to delete that so we can see what we are doing above here. So next we'll look at the order utility. We want to change the visual order of flex or grid children without altering the HTML order. So we have order first, which will display first. We have order 0 to 5, which explicit order values 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we have order last, which displays last, which is like the 6. So, well, let's say we want to have this navigation and we want this to be, let's say here we'll put here to be order 1. And when we do order 1 here is the order value we want, right? And then for medium screen, let's say order MD2. Let's do that for this. We'll say order 2. For medium screen, let's make it 1. So what we want to do, we want the visual order to change depending on the screen size. So now we have this has been done. We have the sidebar, the main content. Now when I reduce this, we want to change it to main content sidebar, and when it becomes medium screen, so we see main content first, sidebar next. So it will switch back to sidebar, main content. So you can use that to change the visual order. We also have offset for columns, and we have an auto layout. Auto layout is what we've looked at when we look at the grid view, where we do call auto, and when we look at column offset is when we just set the offset 1, 2, 3 and the rest. So let me delete this, refresh the page, and then we're going to look at that now. So when we use offset, it pushes a column to the right by adding empty space, and when we use auto, it sizes the column to its content width. So here, let's say we want to have this to have an offset of 3. Let's say offset and offset 3. So the values are 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll put 3, so it will shift the column right by this number of width, and then we want to have this column to be auto. So we'll say, let's make this column auto. So we'll say call auto to make this fit the image we have before it allocates the column here. So when I come here and I refresh, so we have, and then here this text fills the remaining space here. So like we did this. So the image first to take as much, we put the width of 32. But what if I put the width to be T, for instance? When we refresh, we'll see then the text fills the remaining space. So it takes as much space, and then it takes for the remaining. So if I minimize, still the same. We have the last thing we'll look at, that we have already seen, the container utility classes. You see that we use container to have responsive wrapper, and it will center the page content. And so anytime we have a Bootstrap layout, the foundation is to have a container. I have two body here. The foundation is to have a container like we do here. So we have div class is equal to container. So we have container, we have container fluid. When we use container like this, we have a fixed max width that grows at each breakpoint, which is the most common we use. But when we use container fluid, it's 100% width on all screen sizes. So it's from edge to edge. But when we use container with breakpoint, SM and the rest, it gives you the 100% width until the name breakpoint, and then it has a fixed max width. Alright, so we have all of that already. We can just try to work with it here. We've done containers extensive, but we'll do that here. So let's say we have this header here. We want to have this container, and then we want to also have this main class to have container, and then we want to have, let's say, container fluid here. And when I refresh my page, we have that there, full width banner here. So this is the container that we have. With that container, we have things like that. So we have seen all the utility classes that we have. I hope this helps you in the summary of utility classes, and you can use this along with the individual lesson notes from weeks 1 to 7 to work on your Part 1 quiz. Thank you, and see you in the next lesson.